Welcome to Eviliv3, the live mini commentary show that answers the question, how does Superman stuff himself in those tidy shorties? Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we're going to review Superman the movie. This is from 1978. So, Chris, how you doing?
Yeah, good. I appreciate it. This is a trip watching this. I was
Yeah,
just saying before we started that I hadn't seen this since I was like a teenager. I just realized. I always watched the second one. I think I was more of a fan of the fight between the three
right.
supervillains, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess I just never watched the first one since I was like a kid. So
Even
this was
revisiting this, I was like, well, wait, when are they going to fight the three? Guy. I was like, I thought that was in this one, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
I,
because that was one of the things we'll probably get into more, but they shot both one and two at
yeah.
the same time. So your memory of it kind of gets jumbled, especially because they have that big setup in the beginning where the three villains are locked in that piece of glass.
Yeah. Which, when you just think of this as an isolated film, makes zero sense. Like,
Right.
why? Why is there glass that just like falls on them? They're like, ah, and then they're just trapped. I remember as a kid thinking like, that's the coolest intro ever. Like they're
Yes.
like, it's like, because what I used to do is I used to take mirrors, like we had like coffee table mirrors, and we would like angle them sideways or like on their side, and it was like a little through the looking glass for me as a kid. I would just sort of like see the world in a different perspective and sort of have an imaginary experiences and adventures and stuff, just sort of looking at our reality through a mirror at a slight angle. And to sort of see
That's pretty
that sort
cool.
of played through in Superman at the very beginning, I was just like, that's really dope because it's talking about parallel dimensions. It's talking about the phantom zone that Jor-El discovered without actually giving you any context. And so it's just free for you as I'm assuming most kids watch this when they're young. Kids, giving you freedom to just sort of imagine, well, what does that mean? What is that like? What are they experiencing? Because they clearly were terrified as they were going through it.
Yeah.
Um, but
That's
you're,
funny. Your
go ahead.
experience of working with glasses or mirrors is so much sounds so much better than mine. I remember being up until like my 20s saying if I really put my hand through, I think I could get to the other side. So just
Just
occurred
like
to me like,
lightly
wow,
pressing, come on, one of these
it's gonna
days.
happen.
It could happen. Another thing that this reminded me of is how amazing Richard Donner's career was. Richard Donner did some
Yes.
of the best films of my entire childhood. Like all of the Lethal Weapons, Richard Donner. The Goonies, Richard Donner. Like he's
Yeah.
just piling great film after great film, and I got to take my hats off to this guy. Why was he fired from the second one? I don't get it.
Yeah. So I looked into that because I was curious too. He absolutely crushed it, and he had filmed both of them. So why not just release the second one?
Yeah.
So it turns out he had gotten like 75% through Superman 2, and then the producers, this father and son team, who went out on a limb to get this whole project started. They really couldn't get anyone to buy into the premise of a superhero movie being successful. Like it hadn't been done up till this point.
Yeah.
So they basically got I forget the term, but it's basically like a negative buy from Warner Brothers, which basically said, you bring the movie to us, you pay for the actors, you pay for the director, you bring it to us, and then if we like it, we'll pay for the distribution,
Oh
which
wow.
almost never happens because like all the risk now is on the producers. So the fact that they were able to get Richard Donner is just unbelievable. And the reason he got fired was that he was over budget according to them because they
Right.
had put all their own money on the line, these two producers, and I think they were trying to keep it within like 50 million, and I think it went over to like 55 million.
Oh wow.
So but Richard Donner has interviews where he says that he was never given an actual budget. So it was crazy. The behind the scenes to this movie is almost as interesting as the movie itself.
Oh, 100%. I just watched the Superman documentary about Christopher Reeve after crying desperately bad, reflecting back on it. Yeah, no one believed in this. This was not supposed to even work, superhero films, and especially like Superman. He's like the ultimate good in the 70s when everything was the ultimate bad. Like
Yeah.
everything was horrible in the 70s. I don't know if people remember this or not. Um, I mean, I was a wee lad, so I don't exactly remember it firsthand, but history is our guide here. And things
Yeah,
were pretty terrible. The economy was pretty terrible. I mean, Reagan brought it back from the brink, but even then, he instilled corporate ownership over our country. So it wasn't really a good thing, and that wasn't until the 80s. So it was a bad time to be an American, like gasoline shortages, Iran Contra affairs. I mean, all sorts of crazy shit was going on. But
yeah.
yeah, let's talk about Superman then, not Star Wars. That's coming up some other time. So the screenplay is by Mario Puzo, David Newman, Leslie Newman, and Robert Benton. You can tell that a lot of people had their fingers in this thing, trying to get it off the ground because it had never been done before. Cinematography, Jeffrey Unsworth, and the music, of course, John Williams. And I can't
Oh
help
my
but
gosh.
think, in the very same way that Star Wars was a massive success, I think a large part because of the score. I think that's the same thing here. I think
Yeah,
John Williams brought a lot to this. If you did not have his music playing over some of these scenes, it would have been weird. Like,
yeah.
really
Lit-
weird.
Literally, if you didn't watch the movie and you just listened to the score
Yeah.
without any dialogue or context, you would still say something crazy good is happening, like something amazing is happening right now. It's
Yeah.
that it's that stirring. It's that just powerful. Yeah, it's
So great.
such a good
It's
score.
just
Yeah.
a tribute to John Williams being involved in so many different IPs and just knocking it out of the park consistently all the time. Talk about a career that people just envy. He's just amazing. But anyway, Superman was originally released December 15th, 1978. The budget purportedly was 55 million, which in today's parlance is like peanuts. It's nothing.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. But, that's pretty on par nowadays with a good horror film budget. 55 million is a good starting point, but they had to do stuff that had never been done before. They never thought they could make Superman fly and look like he was flying. And while I'm not sure it holds up 100%, not bad. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's the thing. You have to try to put your mind frame into like what was going on at the time. And I know Star Wars came out in that same, like a year earlier or around the same time.
yeah,
So that's kind of a high bar to set. But
yeah,
if you look at other movies around that time, right? Like there were no special effects. Like everything was practical. Everything was like 500-man crews building actual sets and miniatures, and it what they pulled off is pretty amazing for the time. I watched it, and yeah, you're right. There are some parts that are very glaring, but for the most part, I was like, wow, they were able to do that with the helicopter scene.
yeah, yeah,
Unbelievable. I
yeah.
heard that took 6 months.
That took
Six
6 months.
months.
Oh my
6 months. Yeah.
god! I just remember seeing him holding Lois in one arm, and then his arm like wrenched back at the elbow down, holding up the helicopter, and I was just like, that can't feel good because his arm is clearly bending the wrong way, but they just have
Yeah.
to make this shot. And look, I don't think of Christopher Reeve anymore when I think of Superman. I think of Henry Cavill nowadays. But and especially because the whole men's physique has wildly changed in modern parlance versus what it used to be. So, he was trained. Christopher Reeve was not a strong guy. I mean, he had to be trained by David Prowse, which is the original Darth Vader, in order to get as jacked as he was. And he looks healthy. He doesn't look jacked as, modern standards at all. But he has shoulder muscles, and I guess that's enough. You can't really tell a chest because there's big S on it.
Yeah. I heard he gained 50 pounds for the role, which is not that impressive. I've done that about 6 times since I was born. So, you
Like,
know,
that's
I
a
could have
good holiday.
I could have given him some tips. He would have knocked that out in 2 weeks with me. But he did look strong enough. Like I
Yeah.
never bought into the premise that Superman had to be absolutely jacked,
Mm.
because you could take the strongest body like weightlifter in the
Yeah.
world. They can't lift a building. So
Yeah.
like Superman's strength,
That's true.
his strength comes from his like alien and the sun's
Yeah.
rays. Like it's not from muscles. So I was okay with it. But having said that, I do think Henry Cavill does, knock it out of the park.
I
But
just think it
I,
fills out the suit a little bit better. But
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and this was not all to shame Christopher Reeve at all. I mean, I still think he looks great. He has a great smile. His hair is great. Everything about his performance, especially the joy that he exhibits through this role, I think that's what has been forgotten. And that I think that's why the hardcore fans of Superman really railed against Zack Snyder's take on Man of Steel, was because it was lacking that fundamental joy and just truth, justice, and the American way. That he
Yeah,
was attempting to embody, and it's as fake in the 70s as it is now that is actually a thing. Like, people who act like that are usually taken advantage of and get it beaten out of them by life like pretty quickly. But it is
yeah,
something that I think is aspirationally endearing. And I there were moments in this, especially that first whole sequence when he first revealed that he's Superman and he saves Lois in the helicopter. Then he sort of does this hop around town to save a bunch of people and stuff and get a cat out of a tree. I was getting emotional. Like, I was getting like, there's something that happens with Superman when he is Superman, like saving people and being a hero, that I get emotionally wrapped up in. And there's something of my childhood DNA that just immediately bursts and finds so much enjoyment knowing that there's someone, even if just in our collective human fantasies, like that in the world. Like, I want that. I want more of
yeah,
that so desperately bad, and just life doesn't allow it. And it kind of makes me sad. And so when we do see it on screen, it tells us that no, human beings still admire that type of behavior. And like, we see it as something to put on a pedestal, and I like that idea. You don't get that anywhere else. Even like modern Marvel superheroes, they're sort of snarky with their, saving people. It's not this pure selfless act that Superman is clearly doing. I don't know.
yeah.
What's your take on that?
I think that's interesting. I think it's a fundamental aspect of Superman is his honesty, his aspirations just to be, a good person and to
Yeah.
help others and not to lie and everything like that. And I think it's interesting that in the 1930s when the comic book came out, that was probably more normal and like, of course, a superhero was like that. But I think it's interesting when they try to do modern movies, even in the 70s, that almost has to be an important thing that people are looking at that as strange that someone, truth, justice in the American way, they're almost making fun of it. And it would be even worse now, I guess, for the upcoming movie. Like, they have to, like, if the character is going to have that same innocence, like, it
Mm-hmm.
has to be pointed out. Whereas initially when the character came out, that was just, more accepted.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. The only Marvel character that has that is Captain America, who was, frozen from the 40s. It just, today, there's just too much cynicism and negativity that only an alien would have that sort of, a good natured, being to his personality. So,
I
yeah,
want to dig into that just a tiny bit more, because I I've never thought about it this way, but the way you phrased that really nailed it home for me just now. In order for an American to truly feel and embody the American way, they have to be an alien. So, in the context of the story, it's an alien from another planet. But in our real life, it's the dream of going to America, of being an immigrant. You are an illegal alien, or you're an alien that is now legal in this country. And we're living in a time where that's seen as like a horrible thing for some insane reason, but it's always been the promise of America. And so when you have a movie like this made back in the 70s, where, immigration and the idea of the American way of life was still championed, to see it only embodied in someone from somewhere else rings really true and powerful to
yeah,
what America stands for, and certainly what it stood for in the 30s. They were, off in World War One, and they were leading into World War Two, and like, there's a reason to feel one with the country and feel pride and have that. And nowadays, we just, it sounds weird to say that nowadays. It doesn't feel like that, but it's not. It's not the same.
yeah. No, it's a great point. I feel like, in my experience, the people who have come to America from another country, especially, out of poverty and
Yeah.
really like
Or
difficult
war.
circumstances,
Yeah.
or war. Yeah, they seem to appreciate the ideals of the country so much more than someone like myself who was born in the country and probably take it for granted too much. So it is. I don't know if that was the original intention of the authors in the 30s, but it definitely translates
Yeah,
that the analogy of an alien versus
yeah.
actual alien.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean, the country used to throw parades for its veterans when they came home. That shit doesn't happen anymore. Maybe
yeah,
in a small town somewhere, but not like normally. It's just like, oh, I mean, it was horrible in the 60s and 70s. I mean, they were literally throwing shit and demeaning soldiers who came back from Vietnam, and a little bit in Korea before that. I mean, it's a complete shift in framing on how we identified as Americans in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and how we do now. And I have these weird one-off arguments with people who are just trying to make a point in a YouTube video that I make about how soldiers are horrible and they just go off and murder babies and stuff and how they're just abjectly negative things. But I was raised in the promise that they were doing good, not bad. And yes, everyone does bad things, and bad leaders make people do bad things. And Vietnam was a horrible situation to be in, but you can't blame the troops on the ground. You can't blame the individuals dealing with it. And I don't know, this really did bring up like some of these old feelings that I haven't felt since I was a kid, like a Cub Scout as a kid, where there was this promise of America that is no longer there, or at least I don't see it or feel it anymore. But this movie embodied it in just
yeah.
one throwaway line that he mentioned to Lois Lane in an interview when they were literally like flirting with each other, ready to get down.
Yeah, which I never picked up as a kid too. Which she's asking him if his bodily functions. That totally went over my head.
That was awesome. I was just like, oh my gosh, I forgot. What is this? What is she asking him? What are the undertones here?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty dope. All right, so again, it raked in the box office 300 million. So the fear of not being able to make a superhero film was quickly squashed. And the log line of this is an alien orphan is sent from his dying planet to Earth, where he grows up to become his adoptive home's first and greatest superhero. And this is baked in from the very, very beginning. Jor-El is sending his son to Earth because it deserves a hero. He's talking about how the human spirit, there's something about it that's different than all the other known galaxies, and he needs to send his son here because he can help the most here, not to be a leader, but just to support and do good. And yes, it's very sort of that Islamic Judeo-Christian savior storyline, but there's a reason why it's worked. It's because we don't have it and we always want it, you know.
yeah.
And
This
I
is one
love
of
it.
the uh, this is one of the aspects I was most interested when watching the movie to get your take on, because I thought that was so interesting the way the father kept saying throughout some of his messages, where he doesn't want him to interfere with history, but he also wants him to, I forget the phrase, if he said show with your leadership or teach them the right, something like that. And I was like, man, that is a lot of like conflicting messages.
Yeah.
Like what did the father expect Clark, well,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
yeah,
think I think the my takeaway was that he wanted him to be an aspirational image, to help people, to support people, but not to put himself in a position of rulership because he is godlike compared to humans. And so it would be
right.
very easy, and I think there's like alternate versions of the Superman story where he does sort of take rulership of the planet. But that's not what his father wanted, and that's certainly not what his surrogate parents taught him. And I think that's part of what God, I want to think, and for the most part, I think I do, but I want to think that every parent's like this. I want my child to be a good human. I don't want them to be a shitty piece of shit. Life will create that if there's not good parenting. But if you have a solid foundation in parenting, then you're not going to go out and be a criminal or an abusive piece of shit. That's something that's taught and learned. That's not something
Right.
that's natural. And that could be just my weird, idealistic, messed up head. But I really do believe that. I believe good parenting can equate good results in humans. And I think Clark couldn't have had a better surrogate family. Just a nice down
Yeah.
home, normal, farmer family. But then his actual father arguably was even better because he was self sacrificing. He, and here's the, first of all, can we talk about the ridiculousness of this setup? The sun is literally getting larger by the second.
Yeah, you can just look outside.
You can see it just getting bigger. And all of these scientists are like,
Yeah.
we don't believe you. If you say this to the public, you're going to be banished to the phantom zone that you discovered.
Yeah.
Have you lost your mind? You can see the sun. Like, we're screwed. And everyone was just like, la, 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 la.
Maybe they were distracted by those hula hoops
They
that
were
kept going up.
100%. They're like, I bet I could do that. Just let me like double dutch in there and I can get it going. Just jump in when it's low and yeah.
But I,
Wow.
but I'll
Just
tell you though, that was tough to get past that aspect. But the actual idea though of the father, and again, this is something I never thought of as a kid. The fact that he created an AI version of himself
right.
to go with his son, to teach his son, and to be able to interact is so. That was the part that got me emotional. Was like the thought that went into it. I don't care what the technology is. Like you have to spend so much time with that computer to get it to understand you and how you would react to Clark and every question that's going to come up or Kal-El.
Yeah.
It's just the thought that went into that and the love that went into that. Like I want to be there for my son. I can't physically be there because I'm going to die on this planet, but I want to do everything I can to teach him and be there for him. It's not me. I'm not
Yeah.
physically going to be alive for him. So I want to do everything I can to help him after I'm gone. And that was like really moving to me. And like, I hope I'm given like some sort of like a heads up. I hope I don't just like go to sleep and don't wake up. Like I would like to have some idea of that the end is near so I could do something like that. There's a movie, I should have written it down. But there's a movie like that with where basically a father knows that he's dying and his son is just about to be born.
Oh.
And so he records like a year's worth of home movies to show
Oh,
his
wow.
son like how to shave and it's how to do this and how to treat a woman, how to treat a lady and things like that and how to do
Yeah.
your taxes. And it's just a series of home movies. And that I don't know, it just reminded me of that, how beautiful that was. And Marlon Brando, absolutely amazing in that way. I really felt
Yeah.
it.
He is such a shitty human, but he
Yeah.
really does do a good job with the role, I thought. At least I don't know. I mean, like, he's always Godfather to me. Like, I will never not see him that way. But I really liked him as Jor-El in this. Even though I was seeing him through a different lens after having done a bunch of research and seeing how Christopher Reeve was talking shit about him, just mailing in performances and stuff.
I
And
saw that on Letterman, right? He was saying
yeah, just
that
straight up to
ruined
the
it.
public. It's just like, wow, dude.
Yeah.
Of course,
And
he's Superman. What are you going to do?
Superman doesn't lie, so it has to be true.
It's got to be true. Yeah. After hearing all of that, I was like, "Oof, wow! I never saw him like that." But I guess I could see it. He had such a huge career, and he was so popular and so, just out there, sort of creatively. Um, in contrast to the working actors of the time, that inevitably you're going to run into people who don't like how you do things or, think you mail it in or you do in fact mail it in and treat people like shit because you feel like, oh, I'm Marlon Brando. I can do whatever I want. That
Yeah.
does happen, unfortunately, in life. Um, all right. So the setup being that Jor-El sees his planet dying. He doesn't want his legacy to die. And so he sends his son off to save not just his son, but also the people, like Krypton, like the actual people of his species. This is the last best hope to keep his people in existence because everyone else seems to be complete, absolute idiots for no reason. Even in the new Man of Steel, they were complete idiots for no reason. Like, you should be able to see this coming. And of course, I say that since the 70s, scientists have been warning us about catastrophic global change, and
Yeah,
we've just been like,
I was gonna say that definitely, yeah, rings true for what's going on today.
yeah, and I think it resonates even more nowadays than it did when I was a kid because we are seeing like genuine problems happening in our world because we didn't change our behaviors environmentally.
Yeah,
And the fact that we're, near the tail end of the sixth mass extinction of our planet solely because of our behavior, culturally speaking, as humans, um, it's if you care about that stuff, it's pretty devastating. And to think that we knew about this literally in the 70s and we didn't do anything, and we're still not doing anything. Like it's literally happening around us, and we're just like, oh well, it's a lie.
if anything, I feel like it's going backwards. I feel like
Yeah,
some of the laws that came up to try to help things are now being retracted and
yeah,
kind of heading in the wrong direction. So it's just this movie definitely hits home. Like it's
yeah,
people that won't look outside.
yeah.
It's the same people that are in decision makers now.
It's rough. It is rough.
Yeah.
Aside from the environmental issue that immediately sets this movie off, and we see him, and we already spoke about the idea of uh, Kal-El being a savior figurehead, not a literal "I'm going to save the planet." Because again, I thought they did a really great job saying, "Look, you can't be everywhere all at once." He's like, "You can't let your real identity be known because." There are people that are going to not like you because you can save some people and you choose not to save others. Like,
Right.
there's no way around it. And you have to keep it secret because then when they find out who you are, they're going to hurt your loved ones. He's like, oh, okay, I get it. And that just sets up the whole um, challenge of being a superhero right off the bat in a very simplistic two rule way that is easily digestible by kids. Like, yeah, I 100% understand why he can't let his real. And we saw him struggling with it when he had that interview with Lois Lane in her kick-ass apartment, and then Clark shows up and he's like, she goes to the bathroom and he takes his glasses off. He has a real moment where he's like, I got to tell you something.
Yeah.
And then like at the last second, he's like, I can't, it can come back and it hurt her. And he just like shrinks back down and gets right back into the role. I think his performance of Clark Kent / Superman is probably the best that we've seen on screen. Just the way that his performance shifts, his body language shifts.
That
We've never
was
seen it.
100%. That's a great point because that's something I didn't appreciate as a kid. I just was stuck on the whole idea that like Spider-Man, who was my favorite superhero growing up, um, wears a mask. Batman wears a mask. Like you're telling me like glasses? Like did Chris just disappear? Where did
We
Chris go?
Superman? Oh, that's Chris. My
No, it's
bad.
me. Yeah, like that bothered me as a kid, but as an adult, I could appreciate some of the nuances in how he changed his mannerisms and like I feel like it would still it's odd that no one mentions how much he looks like Superman, but
Well, at the end, when between Olsen and Lois, she did have that moment where she was like, "Yeah, he is never around." No, that's silly. I mean, that's sort of the
yes,
tongue-in-cheek
yeah,
trope
yeah,
of
yeah,
Superman. I mean, it's obviously him, but it just
right.
takes glasses and an outfit. But
But
Reeves did like put a physicality there, which
yes,
was different.
there was a lot of nuances that I did not appreciate. Bumping into walls,
Yeah, yeah,
being like he when he's talking to her in the interview, he's got so much game. He's like so smooth and everything like that. And then a second later, like that takes like a lot of like forethought. I thought
yeah,
that was really well done by him. It really did create two different characters in a really good way.
yeah. And I think I immediately jumped to because my first Batman was Keaton. I immediately start jumping to Keaton, who
That's who made the movie, by the way, Michael Keaton. I couldn't think of his name, but I do
oh
recommend if you ever want to just be moved, you're gonna be moved to tears. But Michael Keaton, I'll get you the name of the movie. He's the one that
dude, anything he's done, I'm in for it.
oh, it's amazing. That's the one where he has a terminal illness and he sets up
Oh
a series of
man,
videos for his son. I'm
oh
sorry. Go ahead.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
I will definitely cry to that for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
um, I haven't seen a another superhero have that aspect to them. I mean, because I was mentioning Michael Keaton because he was the next big superhero that happened on screen, on the big screen. And everyone, like, that was a huge success. There was nothing like Batman when it first came out. I mean, the album and the visuals and everything. No one even wanted Michael Keaton to be Batman, but he ended up knocking it out of the park. And even then, he didn't have the performance between his real identity and his fake identity that Superman did. And Superman had nowhere to hide. So it was
Right.
100% on Reeve. And the fact that he pulled it off so beautifully, and no one has since, in my opinion, to that level, just that physicality between Clark Kent and Superman. I think other aspects of the superhero are done better in other people. But I mean, it really endears me to the actor and to the character. This sort of like maiden voyage, as it were, of the character on the silver screen, and just it made the movie, which there's a lot of leaps in logic and there's a lot of nonsense. Visually, it doesn't hold up, but it makes it still an enjoyable watch for me,
Yeah.
just
I
because of the
think
performance.
I think 100%. I think my favorite aspects of the movie were the Marlon Brando, like the relationship, and then right behind it was Christopher Reeves. I just never appreciated him as a kid the way, as an adult, I could look at it, and
Yeah,
especially knowing that we were going to be talking about it, looking at it with that in mind, and just appreciating, like you said, the nuances of some of the mannerisms that he did, and
yeah.
yeah, excellent, excellent.
I did feel like the grow up sequence was odd. Like, how did he know he had to go north? How did he know he had to throw the crystal? How did they know that he had X-ray vision? That was literally never mentioned. How did Superman? I'm sorry. How did Lex Luthor know that those missiles could be controlled? How did he control them? Like, there's just so many holes in this plot with so
Yeah.
many authors being involved in it. You'd think they would have filled in all those little pieces, but they literally didn't fill in any of them. And then, like, if you're just going to deal with time travel and going backwards to reverse time, what about
Oh,
everything else that was going on at the exact same time that he wasn't saving? How did Jimmy Olsen end up where he was if he was
yes.
like, there's so many holes like that I'm just like,
Yeah.
as an adult, I can't handle it. As a kid, I don't give a
Yeah.
damn.
I thought that's how science worked, right? Yeah, sure. You spin the planet backwards. Why aren't we doing this? But as an adult, like spinning the planet backwards, like that happens. Venus, which is like our closest planetary neighbor, it's the same size. It spins backwards. There's no time doesn't work differently there. It's just
Maybe that's why it's so polluted. It's,
maybe
it's going the wrong way.
that's fair. That's fair. But
That's
yeah,
Google
that
it. Science.
that was aggravating. There was the thing with the meteorite. So
Yeah.
Lex Luthor happens to look up and has a book that he remembers of a meteorite that fell in some place.
South
Abdu.
Africa somewhere.
Yeah. Years ago, and
Just
he's like, "Oh,
random.
that makes sense based on the trajectory of a galaxy, a different
Yeah.
galaxy. A
Yeah.
meteorite from years ago has to be from."
And I don't understand the kryptonite thing being a bad thing anyway. You're from there. How
Right.
does the element of the planet that you were born on hurt you?
Yes. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Like your dad put one in your crib when you were sent off
Yeah.
to Earth, for fuck's sake. Like, that whole aspect of it makes no sense. If it was like an evil twin planet, just come up with some other reason why the
Yeah.
element does it. But yeah, his logic to get from Superman said he came from a galaxy far, far away. This one meteor must be the thing
It has to be.
to hurt him, nonetheless. But then, why do you care? Why does it matter anyway? Because let's say you didn't involve Superman at all, Lex Luthor, and let's say your plan went off without a hitch, which the plan was super. It was a real estate scheme. That was the whole movie. It's just real estate. But I don't even know how, but he controlled two missiles to go blow up fault line points to slide California in half so that his worthless desert property is now new beachfront property.
Yeah. And what about that? Like, did he think no one was going to pick up on that? Like
So
after
hilarious.
did he think like after California like fell off the map, like the person who just bought like hundreds of $1 millions of land, who now stands to gain from this, like they're not going to look into it?
Luckiest investor ever. That's the only
Oh,
answer.
so if you enjoyed that, you listen to this. So Mario Puzo, the original writer of this, had an enormous 300-page draft that
Whoa.
when Richard Donner took over, said, "We have to cut this in half. We have to bring in other people. I can't work with this." But these are some of the things that were in the version of the script. If you think the actual movie had some plot holes, there was an evil kryptonite character, a Kryptonian character. He was related to Jor-El and was named Crew-El.
Oh, yes.
That would
Yeah.
have been fun. Lex Luthor in the script was called Luthor Lux
Oh,
and had a
yes.
character tick where he would chew on tissue paper. Oh, that's a shame. That would have been a lot of fun. And then there was a scene where this is in the script that was hopefully going to get filmed. Superman was flying around Metropolis looking for Lex or Lux, and he sees a bald head in a crowd, swoops down and grabs him, and the man turns around and it's Kojak,
Yes.
not Telly Savalas, but actually Kojak, who says, "Who loves you, baby?" That is in the script. So you can safely say Richard Donner saved this movie by not
Yeah.
things.
I did not know any of those facts. I think they are amazing. I want to see that version of this film just for like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 type thing.
Yeah.
That would be hilarious. Oh my God. I mean, arguably Superman 4 is that anyway, but because it's rough. It's a rough film. Yeah, that's insane. But okay, like I get that you have to take an established script and cut it down, and that's why you have so many writers involved because they're continually like refining it, even sometimes on set in some cases, continually like rewriting lines and scenes. I mean, even Lucas did this in the prequels. So you didn't even know what was really coming until it actually was happening, and you just had to react and hope that through editing everything would make sense.
Yeah.
But in the editing, this is why you do reshoots, like, pickup shots and stuff. If it doesn't make sense in the editing, you do those little gap fill-ins. Maybe you have some voiceover, or maybe you just add an extra scene. And like, you could have easily filled in the gaps in this to make it logically go from A to B. Because if you don't know anything about Superman, any of his powers or anything, and you just watch this film, you're going to be like, why did they know that? How the fuck did they know that? How did
Yeah.
anyone know about that? How did he know? How did this ever happen? Like, no one knows because it was never explained. And they're relying 100% on the fact that Superman is one of the most like popular superheroes from World War II to today, and everyone, it's just like ubiquitous. Everyone knows his powers. So even
Yeah.
though he could never fly originally, it was just leap small buildings in a single bound.
Oh, I didn't know that in
Yeah,
the comic books that
yeah.
it progressed up
He
to flying.
just jumped really well, and it just ended up being flying. So I don't care. I still love Superman, so I'm okay with the flying. But yeah, just very, very like the character progressed throughout the comics to be what we know now, but it's wildly different than what it was then. Even though some stuff is still the same. Um, so yeah, I mean, ultimately we have like three plots to this movie that I can think of, and you let me know if I'm off base or if there's any more that I missed. The first is an origin story of a superhero. The second is the love between Lois and Clark developing, and Clark struggling with his alien existence and still wanting to do good by the people, but also wanting to be intimately connected with this woman. And the third is Lex Luthor trying to up his real estate game. And like that's all I can think of as the three main plot points. And for some reason, the police already knew that Lex Luthor was a bad guy, even though he hadn't done anything yet that I can tell. And so they like started trailing a dude who was known to like work with Lex Luthor into a sewer. And like at any minute, I was hoping to see a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, but I know they didn't exist at the time. Um, I thought that whole sequence was weird. Like, why are you looking for Lex Luthor? How do you know he's a bad guy? What has he done? Give us a little like bona fide, like, oh, that's the guy that we saw with Lex Luthor who had something to do with the heist or something. Like give us context so we
Yeah.
understand why we should care about Lex Luthor.
And that was another plot hole too. The character of Otis
Oh
was
boy.
just he's a plot hole in himself. But why would Lex Luthor, this genius, have this as his not only like his main henchman, really his only henchman?
Dude. And
I
Eve,
mean,
Teshmacher!
yeah,
He just yells her name all the
he
time.
does. But he is great though. I mean, I can't picture this movie without Gene Hackman.
Oh yeah.
He was amazing. The only thing that did bother me was that obviously Lex Luthor was bald, but even that was like a fun little twist at the end where he takes the cap off at the end as he's getting arrested. But yeah,
sort of
I
did the
can't.
same thing with the Man of Steel version as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I can't picture this movie without him. I think his scenes were so compelling that it made up for all the other nonsense that was going on. I thought
Yeah.
that he carried so much of it. I wanted more scenes with him.
Yeah, it's also the sensibility of filmmaking. I mean, this when we reflect back on storytelling when Superman first came on the scene, it was radio dramas. So it was very much that sort of pulp uh, hero of the hour type storytelling. So it was just blowing up characters. You had to have someone super dopey with someone super intelligent so they could sort of riff on them and make, little jokes about them. You had to have a super effective hero that can come in and save the day. And like, that was just the version of storytelling. I had just watched, because of the holiday, A Christmas Story again. And just reflecting like on his whole Black Bart scene in that film, that was Superman. That was the relationship between Superman and Lex Luthor in this Superman the movie film, because it was just just sort of radio hour, played off like you would want a modern audience wants more depth and development, but when this was made, it was very much just like, no, let's just recreate the magic of what the radio dramas were, the comic book itself. And yeah, it's silly and campy, but that's what it is. And so why change it? And so I can see like modern audiences seeing Man of Steel, for example, and being like, that's too dark. That's too real. I need it to be more like Christopher Reeve's version, because it was very campy. That's how it started. I don't know. Did that ever like bother you or anything, or were you kind of cool with it?
No, I thought Richard Donner found a good balance, and because you think about like up until then, like the only superhero movies were like the 1966 Batman movie, which was just a version of the TV show where he's taking the United Nations people and putting them into dust and powder, different colors,
I've
and
never
he's got
seen that.
Oh, really? Oh, it's hilarious.
Sounds awesome.
At one point, he gets captured. He's surrounded by sharks. A villain just leaves him, of course, on a float surrounded by sharks. And then he has a shark repellent on his utility belt, because why wouldn't you? So it's that kind of like, yeah. So it's that kind of like campy humor. And that was in the 60s. And there was like a Superman movie and the Man Mole in the 50s.
Oh, wow.
Like there really hadn't been a serious superhero movie. So I kind of like understood that that's what they thought it needed to translate a comic book into a movie. It had to have some degree of campiness, but the fact that Richard Donner was able to tone it down, and like he does have Otis, he does have some elements of that, but that it's also mixed with like a really good actor in Marlon Brando, a really good actor in Gene Hackman, and a very endearing actor who was new to the scene in Christopher Reeves. I feel like he found the right balance. I didn't find it too campy. I thought it was, outside of Otis, I thought it was a good balance of campiness and seriousness.
Yeah. The Otis, Eve, and Lex dichotomy, I thought, was over the top and unbelievable. And even Superman's interaction with Lex, like, I was just like, what are you doing? Why are you like walking through his plan while he's telling you how he's going to destroy half of California? And you're just like, This will never work. You're a maniac. You're a deranged criminal mind. This is like language that you don't really hear. Even in the 70s, you didn't hear that type of language. It was very, very of the time. So I was just like, maybe, maybe that was a little over the top, but it clearly hit a chord in the American cinema file. So like it was a huge success. So we can't pretend like it was too silly,
Yeah.
Do you think they could like? Okay, so we mentioned that, of course, the reason why we're doing this review is because there's a new Superman film coming out next year, and it's taking it sort of back to the joyful roots, supposedly, of Superman. One of the things that we've been talking about was, sweet hell, I totally I had a thought, believe it or not, that I can no longer recall. But damn it, it'll come to me.
I can vamp while you're thinking about it.
Dun, 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 dun. No, it's like because Man of Steel and its DCEU was so grounded in reality. I mean, in superhero reality, and it was so dark. And the sort of 180 that James Gunn is trying to do with the new Superman, are we going to have the exact opposite reaction, do you think, to Man of Steel, where people are like, that's not Superman, it's too dark and gritty. But if they go too far to the Christopher Reeve version, is there going to be an equal reaction going, that's too campy, that's not, we demand more in modern audiences? And
yeah, I think as long as it's different from Marvel, I think there's such backlash right now for the Marvel movies and just the tone that Marvel created, which if you watch like the Iron Man movie, like it had a little bit of snarkiness and jokes, but it was very serious. Like he was, he was in Afghanistan, he was captured, he was going to be tortured and killed. Like it's intense. And then you look at like the latest, Marvel movies, whatever, where there's like all these alternate realities and it's so convoluted and, Ant-Man is joking all the time. So I think people are just tired of that. And I think as long as it's a return to earnestness and it's, has a more serious tone, but it is tough because they got to toe the line. They can't have it be dark because that was what Zack Snyder and that whole era got criticized for, is that it was too dark. So they really have to toe the line between being, serious and not jokey, but also, earnest and uplifting. So it's very tough. And looking at the trailer, I see that he's heading in the right direction. But my issue with it, I think I mentioned in the chat, I was just concerned with the trailer that there's just too much being thrown at it. Yeah. I just feel, I don't know, like
with all the people and stuff.
Yeah, that's I think this movie works because it's just Lex Luthor and him.
Yeah,
there's not a cameo by Batman and this villain and that villain. It's just the two of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think another part of it, and this is what I was trying to remember earlier, is that we started this conversation talking about how great the aspect of Superman was truth, justice, the American way, and how it resonated in the time that Superman was created, and how it resonated all throughout the years until arguably the time this film was actually made. But it's still, there's still a semblance of the public that, aspired to that aspect of the United States. I don't know that we're there still. Like right now, I don't think we're there. I don't think that people are looking at Superman or any superhero going like, you embody America. Like, I mean, we are so divided as a country that how could all of us just like get behind a superhero, and be like, yes, that is what it means to be an American. We can't even agree on what the future or what the current state of America should be, inclusive or exclusive, destructive or aiding each other. Like, what America once was, if it ever was that, is not that anymore. I mean, we've had Capitol riots, we're not there. And I don't know if you bring a superhero back to that realm, if it will resonate with modern audiences anymore. Maybe it's exactly what we need.
Right,
like aspirationally watching Superman, this movie, it got me in the heartstrings, like right on when he was saving people. Maybe that's exactly what we need. And so if they do bring it back, maybe it will do at least a little bit of good for entertainment's sake. But, and I'm not looking for a movie to change the trajectory of a culture, but we need something to get our semblance back of being proud and having something to back that pride up,
I was just
other
gonna
than
say,
hatred.
yeah, I was just gonna say, if you're gonna get in this climate, you're gonna get criticized because there's been so many superhero movies and so many takes on Superman, and I think people are still upset about how Henry Cavill, because it's very public knowledge how he had set aside other projects and then was dumped by the studio. So I think there's going to be some sort of backlash to the new version no matter what. So if I'm the director, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get criticized no matter which way I go with this. I'm gonna I'm gonna try to bring it back towards the aspirational nature of the Superman movie that we're talking about. And if I get criticized for that, I'm
Mm-hmm.
okay. I can live with that. I don't want to try to fit some, other sensibility and then get criticized for something that doesn't feel right. At least I could feel good about an earnest approach to a character who just wants to do good, who's telling the truth, who wants to help people. And if that's too simplistic and and too idealistic for this world, then you know what? That's on them. I'm gonna feel good about it, and I hope that's the approach he takes
Yeah.
with this. You know?
Yeah, I really do too. I love that idea, especially for a character like Superman specifically, because that's his mojo. That's how it works. Um, I mean, this film did so well. It was nominated for a bunch of different awards. It won Best Film Editing, Best Original Score, Best Sound. Received Special Achievement for the Academy Award for its visual effects in the time. In the 32nd British Academy of Film Awards, Reeve won Best Newcomer. Hackman, Unsworth, Barry, and the sound designers earned nominations. It got the Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation, Saturn Awards, and like all sorts of stuff. Great film. It was reacted to and accepted in nothing but positive waves, and it spiraled out to making some, whole franchise of films which didn't live up to the first one, in my opinion. But the second one was probably the best of the bunch. Donner did his own version of a cut for the second one. And if you have access to that, I'd like to review that one next, the Donner
Uh,
cut.
I was hoping you were going to say that. Yeah, because I'm really enamored with what Donner did with this one, and then hearing the story about how so many of his scenes were taken away in the second one, and some of the dopey things in the second one with the S throwing the S, and just this is a lot of things that Richard Lester, I think the new director, added. I
Yeah.
just want to see Donner's version of what it should have been. So I'm glad you said
Good,
that.
good,
Yeah,
good, good.
yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. I'm just sort of looking at some of the other notes that I had for this before we sort of try to wrap this up. Yeah, one of other than the glasses, Clark Kent and Superman parted their hair on opposite sides of the head. So clearly that would confuse people. It's just science. The creators, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, were both delighted with the results of this film. And for people who may try to shit on, Superman as just being like this white guy going out there, this sort of a um, uh, um, patriarchal sort of character. No, I mean, these were two Jews that wrote a character who was an alien who came to America and embodied American ideals. So he was the real American. Everyone else around him were the ones fucking around, and he was trying to inspire them and do good by them, regardless of whether they deserved it. And I think that as aspirationally, that's as good as it gets. Like you can't get more of a celestial hero figure than that. That is the Jesus trope. That is 100% the Muhammad trope. The prophet that comes to idealize the best of what it is to be a human being. And it's everyone else that takes it to shitty places, not their original intent if these were not fictional characters, if they were actually, actual humans. So I like that aspect of it. I think it's a great myth building. And this is why I actually don't differentiate. I may be one of the few people who don't differentiate between mythologies, whether it's religion, like people fervently believe in, I see it as mythology. And so I don't see a difference between a Judeo-Islamic Christian mythology versus these two individuals who wrote a comic book that told of another version of a modern hero. I think the reality is we as human beings live in a very complex and chaotic world where we have very little control over the state of our existence, and sometimes it's nice to just look at someone who is better than us, doing things that are better than what we do, and give us a reason to aspire to something greater than what we are. And that's what I think Superman did. And that's what I think this movie did in the time. I think it was needed, and that's why it did so well. Do you think if they released this today, it would, let's say there's a vacuum of superhero films and they
Mhm.
just drop this in the theaters, do you think this would do well?
No, I think sadly, and it has nothing to do with the special effects or anything like that. I think it just has to do with we're just so cynical and
Yeah.
disjointed that I just don't think that we would accept a character as good natured and innocent. There would have to be a spin on it where, he's caught doing something wrong, or
Yeah.
somehow it, just like how in Star Wars the Jedi are now bad. That's the new thing. That's the modern way of telling stories, is to take a beloved franchise or setting and flip it on its side. And
Mm-hmm.
let's look at the Karate Kid differently. What if the
Yeah.
bad guy was really the good guy and the good guy was the bad guy? It's like we said, Star Wars. Like, I just don't think they would accept a Superman movie this earnest and idealistic today, which is sad. But
Yeah.
we're
I
just
mean,
too cynical.
to pile onto that, even the premise of the new film that's coming out next year is that Superman's struggling with holding up these ideals that the rest of the world doesn't embody or want. They're sort of making fun of him. We had that scene where people were throwing cups at his head, and it's just
Yeah,
sort of painted on this idea that, and I don't know the context of that scene. I just know that the theme of the struggle between being good and honest, that's what James Gunn said this film was going to embody. And so, like, even that aspect, the core of what this hero is, has to be a point of contention in order to bring it to a modern audience. It can't just be it. We
yeah,
can't just have people celebrating him for who he is unless they're kids. All the adults have to be shitty about it because
yeah.
that's what we are in real life.
Even if there was a real alien, a real Superman that came down, that's what would end up happening within 10 minutes. People would be like,
100%.
"What's your angle? Like, why are you doing this?" And
Yeah.
they would just unfortunately that innocence is gone.
It's just we're the worst. I think
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to. We're the
basically.
worst. We don't
Yeah,
deserve the planet we have. We don't deserve the communities that we foster. We don't deserve the beauty and innocence of youth. We are just ruining everything. And I just wish that we could be a little bit more like Superman, just a little bit. And I think the world would be infinitely better if everyone was just that much better.
yeah,
And not to say you have to be one certain way or another. Just don't be a shit ass. That's
yeah.
it.
But I think that sums it up. We don't deserve Superman. We
Yeah.
deserve
Yeah.
Deadpool. I guess we do.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. All right. So let's closing this out. What was your favorite part? Or was there anything else you wanted to talk about before we start winding down?
No, basically, I would say my favorite part to me that hit home was just the steps that not Kal-El, Jor-El
Jor-El?
took. Yeah, just that whole relationship of just trying to be there for his son and however he can, even though he himself physically was going to die on that planet. I just thought that was very moving and something I never considered as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
He was there in the Fortress of Solitude for 12 years. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes I struggle with my son, like telling him like more than one or two things a day that I think will help him. The fact that his dad came up with 12 years of advice, I'm just that's parenting on another level that I bow to you, sir.
100%. What I love that sequence too, because it let you know, okay, Superman is an educated creature. Like he
Yeah.
went through all the knowledge of what was it, like 7 or 12 or something known cultures in the universe. Like I can't remember the number, but there was like a bunch of known like cultures in the all the information of them that Jor-El was aware of, and he taught Superman through these crystals that he had set up.
Yeah.
Like that's I thought high school sucked. Like that's a lot. This is like a master class of information. Like, and that's just our version of school for our, one little country in the region that we live in and however they want to interpret it. This is like global, universal knowledge that Superman has at his. He would be so much smarter than Lex Luthor. So much smarter. Anything that Lex Luthor would know would be a fraction of what Superman would know. And maybe I never thought about this. Maybe that's why Superman is so good, because they do say that the higher education you have, the more sort of liberal you are in general. Not to the person anecdotally, but like in general, you're a little bit more liberal. You have a little more perspective about other people and other cultures, and you're more willing to accept things that are different if you're educated. Superman was the most educated person on this planet because he has galaxies of information that was shoved down his throat by his father. So is that a good thing? I
And
don't know.
no bathroom breaks either. That Fortress of Solitude had to smell pretty ripe.
He
I didn't
he
see one
definitely
bathroom.
pooped in the ocean.
Right?
Can you imagine how cold that would be? I can't poop, it's too cold. Yeah, man. And all the seals watching you. Like, I can't
Oh.
go when you're watching me, seals. Stop. Turn around.
And just taking the suit off to try to poop. It's
Oh
there's
my
no
gosh,
flap.
yeah. Because you got to do the shorts and then the bodysuit.
Yeah, there's no flap in the back like Christmas Story.
It had to be like long johns. Maybe that's why the shorts were there, to hide the flap.
Right.
Or maybe it was just like Buttman, or what was Howard Stern's character? Ass Man or something?
Oh, ass man.
Yeah. Maybe it was like that, where you just pull the shorts down and it's just butt cheeks. It was just like open. That's why he had to have the shorts. I like that a little bit. That's funny. My favorite
Son, are you back from the bathroom? Yeah. I just picture Marlon Brando.
Even his AI version of him is like all
yeah.
like, what are you doing in the bathroom so long? Come on, Kal-El. Let's get this going. We got to talk about this 7th universe.
You need more bran. More bran.
We haven't talked about fiber, son. Let's cover fiber. Because he was talking about everything else. Oh, it was great. Yeah, my favorite was that initial when he saved Lois from the falling on the helicopter and then saving the air helicopter. I got so emotional, like surprised myself by how emotionally caught up in it I got. I was just like, don't let my family turn and look at me right now, because this is such an old movie that I've seen a bazillion times as a kid and a handful of times as an adult. Why is this affecting me right now? Like I maybe it's the holiday, maybe it's my son's back from somewhere else. I mean, it's just like this, I don't know, microcosm of emotion that was just hitting me. Did you
That's
have a
awesome.
least favorite part of this?
Yeah, I think I touched on it before. Just the flaws in logic, and specifically just the character of Otis. I feel like if you take him away, it just adds so much. And I feel bad for the actor. I'm sure he's a great guy, but if you take that character away, I think the movie works so much better, and it would leave you time to add some more, explanation of some of these plot holes, like we mentioned.
Yeah.
So
sure.
I think Otis was the worst part for me.
What do you think about Eve like saving Superman so that he could save her grandma in Jersey from the missile, and then she like sneaks a kiss?
Yeah. There was a lot of kissing people, a lot of sexual assault in this.
Dude,
movie.
I was surprised at how many nips I had spied.
Yeah,
as a kid, I never once paid any attention to that. I was just too young. But now, that's all I look for. And
when she's like, wow. When she's laying, pretending to be unconscious after the car accident, the soldiers are.
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was just like, I wouldn't want to do something. I wouldn't want to ask you to do something I wouldn't be willing to do myself. We got to do mouth to mouth.
Yeah.
You slime ball. Oh my gosh. How is this okay? It was
I
the
know.
70s. That's how it was okay.
Exactly.
Everyone was super shitty in the 70s. Women had to put up with so much bullshit. It was
Right.
disgusting. But yeah, it got us here. So thanks. I don't know. Ultimately, I mean, I'm not going to do ratings for this because it's such an old film. I don't even know how I would possibly rate it. I enjoyed it. I mean, is it something that you think you would introduce to your kids?
Yeah, I think I would definitely like to start with the Man of Steel one
Hmm.
first. I think that one I think would just the pacing is
Yeah.
just so much quicker. I think it's tough. I have a son who's 11 and I find it tough watching movies from the 70s and 80s, even the original Star Wars. I
Yeah.
didn't I never thought of it. I loved it so much as a kid, but there's a good 10 minutes of them just walking in the desert, nothing's happening, and it's tough for kids that have been exposed to the Marvel movies and just things that are so quick and maybe too quick. But this is a difficult one, I think, for a younger generation. I don't think I would start here. If they were into the character, I would like to show them as a nostalgia piece, but I think I'd have to start with Man of Steel. I think
Yeah.
that is the best combination, yeah, of
Yeah.
Superman.
I think so too, and I think it deals with the child focus origin story better than this one. This one brushed over the very in informational youth age. It got to just straight to high school. And that scene in Man of Steel where it was the boy locked in the closet because he was like realizing his powers and he didn't know what the hell was happening, and his mom had to come and talk him through it. I thought that was really emotionally resonant. Like it hyper focused on the fact that you are an alien, not just because you're from a different place, but because you're realizing abilities and powers that no one else even understands at this age. And so
Mm,
for you to try to not only manifest those, but then calmly accept them is absurd. So of course you would freak the hell out. And so just to have this really loving mother being super patient, it really made me think of like special needs parents. Um, I remember, and this is just revealing how shitty I am. When I was brand new to being a parent, before we even, we just found out my wife was pregnant, and they had to do the test of checking to see if the baby was healthy and if it had any disabilities or something in the womb. They had to like do a needle in the belly and shit. Um, we were afraid that that our child was going to have like a problem that would require us a lifetime of attention. That's how shitty I was just like, I don't want to, like, I want to have a kid, but I want to see them grow into an adult and then become independent and then, come over for holidays. That's the experience that I was looking for. But there are parents who take care of their kids their entire lives because they kind of have to, just because of one disability or another. And it doesn't make the kid any less. They're still a human being with needs and feelings and thoughts and concerns. And it sort of, watching that in Man of Steel made me feel horrible about being the version of a parent I am, for feeling the way I felt. But also, it endears me to those parents who do devote their lives and have infinitely greater challenges than I could ever imagine, that I take for granted because I don't have to
yeah.
deal with that stuff. And it just, the scope of human existence is so much greater than our own individual experience, and that just makes me think about that. And if you can do that in a superhero flick, well, I think you've done something right. You force someone to sort of step outside of themselves and reflect. I never thought of that in a Superman movie, and that's why I think it resonates so much with Man of Steel. We didn't get any of that in this. We just
Yeah.
had a
Yeah.
hand over the shoulder of Papa Kent talking to Superman. Well, you can't really show off, even though you could, but it's best to be humble, and that was it. I was just like, nah, man, let's have those informative year moments.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They needed that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Well, thank you so
Also,
much for joining me with this review, and I hope you're going to be cool with coming back for Superman 2.
I'm pumped, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invite. And this has been fun to revisit. This
Yeah.
is
It just
definitely long overdue. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And because it spurs so many different types of conversations too. It's not just superhero comic focused. And that's what I love so much about these reviews is it brings so many aspects of our own human experience to light that I don't know. That's why I keep doing this stuff. It's fun because of that. So
Awesome.
thank you for contributing to that, and your insight is always appreciated, man. I really do
I
appreciate
appreciate it. Thanks, man.
it. For all of you watching, have you seen Superman the movie, the original one? When was the last time you saw it? And if you revisited it, do you think you would feel the same way than we do? And if not, let us know in the comments below. We'd always love to hear what you have to say about it. Things. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, remember the evil spelled backwards is live. Oh, I didn't even go to this screen. We could have had posters. Dang it. What a chip. I like it or not, evil spelled backwards is live. So get out there and be evil.
Maybe not missiles to Hackensack evil.
Yeah, not that evil.
A little evil. Otis evil.
Trying to steal a bear claw.
Yeah.